Hello, hello. Today we start off with threats. Threats. Donald Trump. Tuesday, July 28th, 2006. Jesus. Oh man. We notice here. John Terrington should not allow the United States to leave town until it passes the Save America Act, or far better still, terminates the filibuster, where Republicans could quickly pass everything they dreamed of, including full and deep-throated Save America Act with sexual reference, okay, the budget, the ever-living debt crisis, disaster, 1929. So we acknowledge the circumstances of the time. That's cool. Oh, it's the waste squad. Western civilization to 1914. With patterns of change. Patterns of change. And in order to obtain perspective, sometimes divide the culture of a society. Alright? And we're going to do it in a somewhat arbitrary fashion into several aspects. We can divide a society into 6 aspects: military, political, economic, social, religious, and intellectual. Naturally, there are very close connections between these various aspects, and in each aspect there are very close connections between what exists today and what existed in an earlier day. For example, we might want to talk about democracy as a fact on the political level, or an aspect. In order to talk about it in an intelligent way, we would not only have to know what it is today, we would have to see what the relationship it has to earlier facts on the political level, as well as its relationship to various facts on the other 5 levels of society. So naturally, we cannot talk intelligently unless we have a fairly clear idea of what we mean by the words we use. And for that reason, we shall frequently define the terms we use in discussing the subject. And we have the organization of power. Organization by force. And I'm going to pull out Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. On the political level, we have the military levels concerned with the organization of force. The political level, the organization of power. Force, power, same fucking thing. The economic level, with the organization of wealth. By the organization of power in a society, we mean the ways in which obedience and consent by acquiescence or implied consent are obtained. Obtaining your consent. If you agree, then yeah, don't say anything. If you disagree, please send $14.95 to no. The close relationships between the levels, they can be seen from the fact that there are three basic ways to win obedience. A force, beating someone into submission. Really about force, while we leave out coercion and threats. If you don't submit, why, your family goes into with you. Or but buying consent with wealth. And, well, we're not going to define wealth. Well, fuck you, Mr. Quigley. I think wealth is a very fucking important term. We should define wealth. And since you haven't, is wealth fiat money? Or are we talking about, the illusion of wealth? I don't know. Or by persuasion. That might be our threats and coercion here. Persuading. Why, dear sir, should you give me your consent? Why, there's a guaranteed opportunity. You can move up from the slip chain, become your own master one day. Just have to show me you're loyal. Now, if I have to question that loyalty, I might have to overlook you and that promotion. Each of these three leads to another level. The military, economic, or intellectual outside the political level. And at the same time, the organization of power today, that is the methods for obtaining obedience in the society, is a development of the methods used to obtain obedience in society in an earlier period. Say what? The military, economic, or intellectual outside of the political level, and the organization of power today, methods used for obtaining obedience. Is this a sins of the father type thing we're talking about here? Well, your forefathers had agreed to consent to this new form of slavery we have established for these United States of America. And you, lucky boy, you have inherited a right, your part in this contract, if you will. We'll call it the social contract. Since you and your heirs are not direct descendants of our bloodlines, well, you should not hold any office. I'm really convinced that's what what governments are. And in fact, Quigley really fucking validates that idea, as we will discover. If you happen to know Quigley, that's great. If not, you're going to be in for a treat. The relationships are important because in the 20th century, in Western civilization, all 6 levels are changing with amazing, rapid, speed would have been but we know, you arrogant fucking pricks. in the relationships between the levels are also shifting with great speed. Well, you couldn't have come up with a better word than speed, but acceleration, progress, momentum. When we add to this confusing picture of Western civilizations the fact that the other societies influence it or being influenced by it, it would seem that the world in the 20th century is almost too complicated to understand. This is indeed true. Who can understand the madness? We shall have to simplify, perhaps oversimplify. We're going to throw it in layman's terms. We're going to dumb it down. We're bringing down the Forrest fucking Gump terms here. The complexities in order to reach a low level of understanding. When we have reached such a low level of understanding, perhaps we shall be able to raise the level of our understanding by bringing into our mind, little by little, some of the complexities which do exist in the world itself. In the military, chief development has been the steady increase in the complexity and cost of weapons. Cheap sticks are easy to use, and almost anyone can use a cheap stick. And wouldn't really require much training, but armies are generally made up large masses of cheap stick holders, aka amateur soldiers. Such weapons we call amateur weapons or cheap sticks. Such armies we might call mass armies of stick holders, or a militia, citizens, soldiers, okay? In the age of pyramids, the classical Greek, and in the 19th century, the Western civilization were periods of amateur weapons. And we had the citizens soldier, of course. But by the 19th century, we were proceeded with weapons of more expensive and required long training in their use. Really, like where the man with a stick came running at his enemy, fearless, and his enemy simply draw back his bow and drop that fucker. Next thing you know, the man's child, when he grew to a man, he took up his stick, connected a cord, and drew up a long bow. Then he come running at the cocksuckers. This is my father! And the cocksucker pulls out a rifle. Let's see. Periods of specialist weapons are generally periods of small armies of professional soldiers, usually mercenaries, private security, police. In a period specialist weapons. The minority who have such weapons can freely use force upon the majority who lack the weapons. That's what we get. Wait, but your police department, what do they take? Yeah, they'll use that tape like a can opener. Peel through your front door. Or better yet, use them in traffic stops. Get out of the car now. Oh, you don't want to get out of the car? Well, we'll roll it over. Make him part of the car. He doesn't want to get out of the car? Make him part of it. How entertaining would it be if the playing field was leveled? Would we have a stalemate? Or an all-out ego battle? So, period of special weapons, the specialist weapons, tends to give a rise to a period of minority rule and authoritarian government. Authoritarian governments are wonderful, very wonderful. Yes, the greatest we've ever seen. But in a period of amateur weapons is a period in which all men roughly equal in military power, a majority can compel the minority to yield, and the majority rule, or even democratic governments tend to rise. The medieval period is in which the best weapon was usually a mounted knight on horseback. It was clearly a specialist weapon. Was in a period of minority rule and authoritarian government. So the kings of the earth have always used the weapons to parasite off from the working people. And so the moral of the story is, don't be a working people parasite. What really irks my nerve is those hard-working people, and knowing they're being stolen from, tend to bitch about the people who take the least amount of money out of their pocket. It's a curious thing. If you're high status, well, I guess we can overlook that view. It's these people at the high status are the reason anything's being taken from you at all. As far as the rest of it, you volunteered by consent to have that taken. So stop bitching. He said, tax the rich, tax the rich. Well, you can't. You're trying to enforce a level of servitude and slavery on the rich. You tax them. See, the slavery only works one way. It would double a thing that you could lobby. You're going to go lobby in any government, anywhere, And they don't even have the authority. You know why? Because the rich are going to look at them and say, what makes you think we are compelled to follow your law? They're looking at them and say, where in the fuck do you think you get your authority from? Do you want to tax me? Well, fuck you. I'm going to cut off all of your fucking your credits, your request for credits, your request for money. Level, Gladstone, go. These are family anyway. You're asking for a family feud. You try to turn these families against each other. How dare you? It's like, people who use swatting as a means to get another killed. They're just someone too cowardly to do an act themselves. Just admit it. They're just too much of a pussy, a cunt, to go do the thing they want to see done. So they act like the cunts and pass off the dirty work. If I had a magical power, it would be put you in a position of the cunt you are, to show you. You get to experience it fully. I think that would be wonderful. Honestly, if I had a power, it'd be Care Bear Steer. How cool would it be? Bombard somebody with a level of that they just stop acting like a dick. Oh, I was gonna write you a ticket. You know what? I stole all this money today, and I'm gonna give you a whole thing. Here, take my. Your car looks like shit. Just please take mine. You know. Here's the keys to my car. My address is, you know, this is where you can go get my car. Even the medieval knight was made obsolete, along with his stone castle. Wait a minute, the knight didn't own the castle. The knight was in service of the king. The fuck you mean? The castle's still very effective. Show me someone breaching the castle walls. No one's doing it. I think you could parkour your ass up there, but you might end up on a pike or something. I don't know. And when people did start jumping the walls, I'm sure they filled them out. But alligators, sharks, electric eels, and grizzly bears in there. It's there. Get through there now. Yeah, we're gonna put them all in the water. We had, by the invention of gunpowder and the appearance of firearms, these new weapons were so expensive and so difficult to use that the minority rule and authoritarian government continued, even though the government sought to enforce its rule by shifting from the mounted knights and professional pikemen and musketeers. After 1800s, the guns became cheaper to obtain and easier to use. By 1840, the Colt revolver sold for $27. $27. A little more than a week's worth of wages, but well, I mean, if you had a real good job, you might pull that off in a day. The Springfield musket for not much more, and these were as good as weapons as anyone could get at the time. Mass armies, so please don't make a fucking mess. Why are you so destructive? Anyway, mass armies of citizens equipped with cheap and easily used weapons began to replace the armies of professional soldiers, and began in about 1800 Europe and even earlier in America. At the same time, democratic governments began to replace authoritarian governments in name only. They're very much in power. They just had to back off a little bit. But cheaply in those areas where cheap weapons were available and the local standards of living were high enough to allow people to obtain them. And so the arrival of the mass army of citizen soldiers in the 19th century created a different problem of control, because the techniques of transportation and communication had not reached a high enough level to allow any flexibility of control in a mass army. And such an army could be moved on its own feet or by the railroad, and the government could communicate with its various units only by letter, post, or by telegram. Hey, come here, dickhead. Hey, Marge. Get out from back there. Come on. Come here. Alright. Come here. Here. You go out. You go out here. You run that off. Oh my God. Some mobilization, the rise of authoritarian government. Say in the Middle Ages, there had been no state, no public authority. Political organization had been a feudal system held together by obligations of personal fidelity among a small number of people. With the reappearance of the state and public authority, new patterns of political behavior were organized in what is called the feudal monarchy. We had the reappearance of the state, reappear, first time since the collapse of Charlemagne's empire in the 9th century, but with a restricted allegiance to a relatively small number of persons over a relatively small area. The development of weapons, the steady improvement of transportation and communications made it possible to compel obedience over wider areas, and this made it necessary for a base allegiance standing on something wider than personal fidelity to a feudal monarch. Accordingly, the feudal monarchy was replaced by the dynastic monarchy, and the subject of subjects owed allegiance to a royal family. A dynasty Day nasty. Day nasty. That's what it is. Day nasty. They real nasty. And the real dumbass, basis of the day nasty rested on the loyalty of the professional army of pikemen and musketeers. So what the hell's fishing and candy bars got to do with anything? We got a shift from personal army of mercenaries to the mass army of citizen soldiers. A new basis for control. With the nationalism gave rise to national states and its typical political unit of the 19th century. This shit was not possible for the larger dynastic states, which ruled over many different language and national groups. By the year 1900, 3 old dynasty monarchies were being threatened with disintegration by the rising tide of nationalistic agitation. These three, Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and Russian Empire of the Romanovs, did disintegrate as a consequence of the defeat of the First World War. So there's some pretty interesting Masonic murder of the Romanov family, which is in recent times have regained their status and returned. There were survivors, apparently, in the Romanov family. So the Romanov Empire may rise again. And the same could be said for the Ottoman Empire, and maybe even the Austro-Hungarian. It's funny, we don't have, it's the only empires we have. What of China, Japan, England, Spain? I mean, we have 3? There are royal ass bags with titles all across the world. Not. Do they carry a driver's license? Do they run around with CDLs? I don't think so. Do they run around with Social Security cards and birth certificates? Here I am, applying for my benefit. Anybody ever happen to see one of these people in the line? You probably record it. Say, look, they're just like us. We had smaller territorial units replaced them. States like Poland, Czechoslovakia, or Lithuania. They organized largely on the basis of language groups, which they had reflected adequately enough nationalistic sentiment of the 19th century, and they reflected a very inadequately the developments of weapons, communication, transportation, and economics of the 20th century. And by the middle of this latter century, these developments were reaching a point where the states could produce the latest instruments. That sounds like a legal word there. Are we talking money, paper, commercial paper? Reaching a point where the states could produce the latest instrument of coercion and were in a position to compel obedience through coercion, lawful, very much lawful contract. And compel obedience over areas much larger than those occupied by people speaking the same language and otherwise regarding themselves as sharing a common nationality. Not even fucking neighbors in towns get along, do they? Not when they foosball teams get together. And all of a sudden this town all of a sudden hates this town. That town hates this one. And the foosball is all that matters, because none of this other shit has any bearing on your life whatsoever. None. So when you get a bill for taxing you for the air you breathe, bitch at your neighbor. So by the middle, oh yeah, we've already covered that. So even as early as 1940, it began to appear that some new bases, more continental in scope than the existing nationality groups, must be found for the new superstates, which were being born. And it became clear that the basis of allegiance for these new superstates of continental scope must be ideological rather than national. Thus, in the 19th century, national state began to be replaced by the 20th century's ideological blockhead. And at the same time, the shit from the amateur to the specialist weapons made it likely that the new form of organization would be totalitarian, tyrants, authoritarian, rather than mob rule, as the earlier national state had been. However, the prestige of Britain's power and the influence in the 19th century was so great in the first third of the 20th century that the British parliamentary system continued to be copied everywhere that people could set up upon a new form of government, spreading demonocracy throughout the world. And I would argue demonocracy is just a legal deception. That these royal dynasties that have lasted for 1,000 years weren't so ignorant to understand that maybe we could just slip behind the scenes by using a little wordplay with the idiots. Throw some words at them that they don't understand, and we'll use words they think they understand and get them to agree. Agree? So this happened in Russia in 1917. We have Turkey the year later, Czechoslovakia, and Poland in 1818, 1890, 19, and most of the states of Asia, such as China, in 1911. So we turn to the economic level. We turn to a series of complex developments. It would be pleasant if we could just ignore these, but obviously we cannot, because the economic issues have been of paramount importance in the 20th century, and no one can understand the period without at least a rudimentary grasp of the economic issues. In order to dumb these down somewhat, we may divide them into 4 aspects: energy, materials, organization, and control. It is quite clear that no economic goods can be made without the use of energy or materials. The history of the formula falls into 2 chief parts, and which is divided into 2 subparts. The main division, about 1830, we talk about the year, separates an earlier period when production used the energy delivered through living bodies. In the later period when production used energy from fossil fuels delivered through engines. The first half is subdivided into an earlier period of manpower and slavery, freedom, and a later period using the energy of draft animals. This subdivision occurred around 1000 AD. The second half, since 1830, is subdivided into a period in which used the coal and steam engines, and a period in which used petroleum and internal combustion engines. This subdivision continued until about 1900 or a little later. Well, the development of the use of materials is familiar to everyone. We can speak of the age of iron before 1830 and the age of steel 1830 through 1910, and the age of alloys, light metals, and synthetics since 1910. And naturally, all these dates are arbitrary and approximate, since different periods commence at different dates in different areas, fusing outward from their origin in the core area of Western civilization in Northwestern Europe. We turn to the developments which took place in economic organization. We approach the subject of great significance. And here again, we see a sequence of several periods. There were 6 of these periods, each with its own typical form of economic organization. At the beginning, in the early Middle Ages, Western civilization had an economic system which was almost entirely agricultural, organized into self-sufficient manners, with almost no commerce or industry. This manual agrarian system was added, or after about 1050, a new economic system based on trade and luxury goods of remote origin for the sake of profits. We might call this commercial capitalism. It had 2 periods of expansion, and in one period, 1050 through 1270, and another period, 1440 through 1690. And those are interesting dates of themselves, are they? I almost wish I could mesh these 2 books together, because it'll help complete the fucking picture here. The typical organization of these two periods was the trading company, and the second, we might say, the charter trading company, like the Massachusetts Bay Company, the Hudson Bay Company, or various East India companies. The next period of economic organization was the stage of industrial capitalism, beginning about 1770, and was characterized by the owner management through a single proprietorship and or the partnership. I don't know why I'm struggling with that. That's very, very, very funny and irritating. The third period we might call proprietorship. No shit. Get the fuck out of my head. The third we might call financial capitalism. It came about 1850 and its peak about 1914 and ended about 1932. Its typical forms of economic organization were the limited liability corporation and the holding company. It was a period of the financial or banker management rather than one of owner management, as in the earlier period of industrial capitalism. The period of financial capitalism was followed by a period of monopoly capitalism. In the fourth period, typical forms of economic organization were cartels, trade associations. And this period again appeared by 1890, took over control of the economic system from the bankers about 1932. Huh. How do you figure? I like to see some proof of claim. And it is a distinguished period of managerial dominance in contrast with the owner management and financial management of the two periods immediately preceding it. Many of its characteristics continue even today. But the dramatic events of World War II and post-World War period put it in such a different social and historical context as to create a new sixth period of economic organization, which might be called the pluralist economy. And the features of this sixth period will be described later. I'm sorry, I am a bit stuffy. It is irritating, but it is what it is. We have to make do with this garbage can we call our body. Dumpster fire. The approximate relationship of various ages may be seen in the following table. Well, that's not a table, that's a page. The manure. That's where, yeah, the manor where they worked in manure. And this was a custom management type of organization. The commercial capitalism, 1050, 1270, company, municipal, What's the municipal got to do with it? It's government, merchantism, merchant, mercantilism, municipal, mercantilism, mercantilism, Kant. That's right. And the state chartered company, state, mercant, merchant, mercantilism. That's something else. All right. The industrial capitalism, private firm, partnership, owner, financial capitalism, corporation, whole companies, we get the bankers, monopoly capitalism, cartels, the trade associations, the managers, the pluralist economy, lobbying groups, technocrats, corporate dominance, corporatism, corporation nation. Two things should be noted. In the first place, these various stages or periods are additive in a sense, where many survivals of earlier stages into later ones, as late as 1925, they were still in manner functioning in England. Cecil Rhodes Chartered Company, which opened up Rhodesia, the British South Africa Company, was chartered as late as 1889. In the same way, owner-managed private firms engaging in industrial activities, or corporations and holding companies engaging in financial activities could be created today. In the second place, all the later periods are called capitalism. This means an economic system motivated by the pursuit of profits within a price system. Commercial capitalists sought profits from the exchange of goods. The industrial capitalists sought profits from the manufacture of goods. The financial capitalists sought profits from the manipulation of claims of money. And the monopoly capitalists sought profits from the manipulation of the market to make the market price and the amount sold such that his profits would be maximized. It is interesting to note, as a consequence of these various stages of economic organization, Western civilization has passed through 4 stages of economic expansion marked by the approximate dates 1970 through 1270, 1440 through 1690, from 1717 to 1928, and since 1950. 3 stages of expansion were followed by the outbreak of imperialist wars, and the stage of expansion reached its conclusion. These 100 Years' Wars, the Italian Wars, the Second 100 Years' War, wars and the world wars. The economic background of the third of these will be examined later in this chapter. But now we must continue in our general survey of the conditions of the Western civilization in regard to other aspects of culture. One of these is the fourth and last portion of the economic level that concern with economic control. There's 4 stages of economic control. 4 stagecoaches of economic control. 4 stages of robbery, armed robbery by a bank, protected by an all-knowing intelligence agency, army. Who are the standard armies for? They're against the people. Duh. You don't see soldiers out there killing soldiers. No. They bomb civilian targets. They blow up civilians. Hospitals, schools, bridges, power plants, farmers. Duh. This is the age of reason here. Stop being unreasonable. Why, if you was to fight another fucking army, why, you might risk your biscuit. But 15 of you gang up, completely armored out and well armed, and gang up against some stupid fucking blue line supporting fucking retard who go fall at your feet and kiss your ass while you beat him. Economic control, passing 4 stages of Western civilization. Of these, the first and third periods of automatic control, in the sense that there was no conscious effort at a centralized system of economic control was over. While the second and fourth stages, so we're talking about here and here. But second, conscious control. Periods of conscientious efforts at control at these stages. It should be evident that these 5 stages of economic control are closely associated with the stages previously mentioned in regards to the kinds of weapons on the military level or forms of government on the political level. The same 5 stages of economic control have a complex relationship to the 6 stages of economic organization. An important stage of industrial capitalism overlapping the transition from state mercantilism to laissez-faire. The social level of the culture. When we turn to the social level of the culture, we can note a number of different phenomena such as changes in the growth of the population, changes in the aggregates of this population, such as the rise or decline of cities and the changes of social classes. Most of these things are far too complicated for us to attempt to treat them in any thorough fashion here. We have already discussed the various stages of population growth that shown Europe was about 1900, generally passing from a stage of population growth with many persons in the prime of life to a stage of population stabilization with a larger percentage of middle-aged persons. This shift in type B to the type C population in Europe can be placed most roughly about at the time at the 19th century gave rise to the 20th century at about the same time or shortly after, and closely associated with the rise of monopoly capitalism, with its emphasis on automobiles, telephones, radios, and such. This shift in the aggregation of population, this shift was a period we might call the rise of the city, and which year by year the larger portion of the population lived in cities, to what we might call the rise of the suburbs, or the period of the megalopolis, in which the growth of residential concentration moved outward from the city itself into the surrounding area. Third aspect, the social level to which we turn our attention, is concerned with the changes in social classes. Each of the stages in the development of economic organization was accompanied by the rise to prominence of a new social class. The medieval system had provided feudal nobility based on the manorial aggregation system. The growth of commercial capitalism in two stages gave rise to a new class of commercial bourgeois the growth of industrial capitalism gave rise to two new classes, the industrial bourgeois and the industrial workers. God bless. Ah, come on. Yeah, shit. Try to get comfortable here, damn it. Just get hurt. God, I wish I felt better. Because everything's a fucking struggle. I like you a bit more. This is out of me. Oh, shit, man. 58. 60. There you go. Yeah. That's $110. 110 pages in that chapter. It goes to 110. Oh, which would plan videos, I guess. I'm not certain. I didn't want to keep this going. Like, it started thinking I might be able to read through this a little quicker, but I don't want to rush through it either, though. There's a lot of other questions and things that I want to kind of get into as we get into the further down in the chapter here. It really what I really want to point out is all the points of control that are highlighted throughout this book. Jeez, that hurts. See a shift from one to the other associated with the separation of control, ownership, and economic life. This shift is also associated with what we might call from change, yeah. From a two-class society to a middle-class society. I guess I could. No, I want that back the way it was. Thought I could highlight on top of it. And let's see. Under industrial capitalism, The early part of financial capitalism society began to develop into a polarized two-class society. The bourgeois stood opposed to the mass proletariat. The basis of the development that Karl Marx he formed his ideas of the inevitable class struggle, which the group of owners would become fewer, richer, while the mass workers became poorer and poorer, but more and more numerous, until finally the mass would rise. I'm not certain of that last part. Karl Marx was a tool of the cocksuckers. I think this part here was a social design, a pleasant little lie, because I think they might have understood that technology one day would continue to progress until an ultimate technology would come about on absolute control over the entire world. Then they wouldn't have to hide their secret rituals. Something I wondered with a lot of the they talk about the Aztecs and the open beheadings and things. I wondered how much of that was the power class, the rulers of the time that actually was that like the last gold age? Is this what they talk about when they talk about the gold age? Because I kind of believe it is, where the rulers could come out and openly do whatever they want in front of the masses. Either the masses were participating, or this was maybe a resort like Epstein Island, you know, for those in the club to go party. I do wonder how much the history of the world, if we could go back in time and see it actively play out, what it would be. And if you ask I don't know how much any individual out there spends looking at things like the afterlife and these stories of near-death experiences. But I've listened to a lot of different, a lot of different stories. Not all of them are verified. In fact, I wish I would have started with with a notebook and who could be verified and who can't. Sometimes it's obvious, like you look at a motherfucker, it's like, yeah, this motherfucker definitely fucking went through the ringer versus some of these people are like, I don't know, man. But one thing's for certain, that there are a variety of experiences that are told, almost so vast and different, and the person, in a lot of cases, they may not even, they may not go that route. They may not be like Christian, or they may not be Muslim, they may not be religious, or they can be very religious, but you get things, people like seeing anywhere from God, Jesus, fucking George Carlin, Mickey Mouse, and fucking aliens. It's like, what the fuck? Buddha, Krishna, fucking, just, I don't know what to make of it. I don't. This is still off the. Well, I don't know. It was just it was a fucked up dream. I can tell you that. It was short. I don't know if I could breathe, like for real, or if I was just in the dream, like I couldn't breathe. But I think that's kind of how I woke up. Was I don't even remember exactly what it was, but there was this lady like on the other side of this wall, and she had like this little window with sliding glass. She was sitting behind it, and she did something to me, and I went to reach out there and like just kind of touch her, and they're like, you can't do that, and I did it. I was like, go I'll do it anyway. And I touched her, and she like ripped like paper, her arm, really, where I touched her, like ripped apart like paper, and not like flesh or nothing like that. It was like I ripped a sheet of paper. The next thing you know, it was weird. It was like I was put unconscious and asleep within the dream, because I felt like I'd woke up, like I did that, but there was a space of time missing, and I woke up, and these fuckers had pierced my fucking mouth shut and put, not just my mouth, but like piercings with these big leather strips all through my fucking tongue and my mouth, and I couldn't fucking breathe. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, well, why in the fuck would you do something like that to begin with then? And there are other parts that I remember, but I have no idea what they mean, and I have no fucking desire to speak of them. I don't want to speak of. I don't understand it. say by the 1900s, social development took a turn so different that it, from that expected by Marx, that his analysis became almost worthless, and the system had to be imposed by force in the most backward industrial country instead of occurring inevitably. That's all, folks. Is the most advanced industrial country as he had expected. I wish it'd go off, I'll tell you that. I'd like to open that fucking door. Oh, God. Jesus Christ, my body hurts so fucking bad. It's so fucking irritating. I'm tired. Fucking always fucking being in fucking pain. And Karl Marx, just give him credit for all that, though. And at least I don't remember. It's been such a long time since I looked at Marx. That's the other thing. Fucking shit I've been able to recall, like just freaking all of a sudden start to lose it. Energy production. Is that really true, though? I mean, yeah, I mean, I get machines do a lot of work, but machines don't operate without fucking people either. So how you figure mass production requires mass consumption? I mean, sure, you make a lot of things, you want to sell a bunch of them, but I mean, if you're going to sell something and you're going to take your time on the other end to use your time and energy to buy it, wouldn't you want that thing to be the last time you fucking bought it? Like, I'm gonna buy this right fucking here. And this motherfucking thing better fucking work when I fucking keel over. In fact, that motherfucker better work 4 fucking generations from now. My family using this. That's what really pisses me off. That I should have been born. Well, I think we all should have, but my personal preference is I should have been born. I should have had an estate waiting in the wings to be handed down. Farm, something. But now, Everything's gone to shit. I told myself, I said, man, you're fucking retarded. I said, you're so fucking dumb. What are you doing? I'd try to fix that. Products, the new technology had to be distributed to the working groups as well as to others, so that rising standards of living for the masses spread of corporate form, industrial allow control to be separated from ownership. In that model, in that thing motto, control, own nothing, control everything. After 1900, so replaced by the mass middle class society. Process leveling up. Poor level down the ridge oriented economics lead up, sent by government policies regarding taxation, social welfare, warfare, well, there should be social warfare after 1945. Yeah, I will cut it here, man. I just keep. I gotta get up. I'm trying to remember how I wish I felt better. I wish I could keep on, but no, not right now. I just keep going worse and worse. Energy just get zapped. So good night, good evening. Thanks for watching.